Hey guys, this is Heen. I've been getting a lot of requests for video topics, and one of the most common is not surprisingly on tips to increase MMR. Initially, I was reluctant to do one for various reasons. First off, there are all kinds of players, and they have different reasons for being stuck in their bracket. And since YouTube videos are targeted at a general audience, it forced me to give generic advice that you could find elsewhere. And that didn't seem very helpful considering I don't know what position you play, I don't know what bracket you play in, and most importantly, I'm not a booster, so I wouldn't really know what the games you play are like, meaning I would just be guessing around as to what your problems are. However, I have spent a lot of time surrounded by some of the best players in the world and had both the pleasure of literally backseat gaming them as well as being backseat gaming. And from time to time, I've also received advice on how to gain MMR. Pro players generally play to win rather than to gain points at all costs. And this might sound confusing, so let me explain. For example, let's say Matumba Man has last pick and it's a perfect Broodmother game. He might consciously not pick it because it's cheesy and there's nothing to be learned. I've noticed that although ranked matchmaking is a form of training grounds to pro players, whereas it's a battlefield to most other people, there's still much to be learned from how they go about it. To give you an analogy, writing a book on a broad topic like how to get rich would be quite difficult compared to writing a book about the habits shared by successful people and how they improve their daily productiveness. And that's kind of my approach to this video, talking about some things that pro players commonly do that can improve your climb, which are based on my observations rather than personally developed skills. So let's get right to it. The first step is to minimize diversity. And what I mean is that there are more than 100 heroes in the game and 5 artificially created positions, but that doesn't mean you have to play all of them. Too often, I see people play heroes they haven't played in weeks because they want to counterpick for a better matchup. If you accept that your MMR is accurate as of now,
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
then you need to play heroes and positions that are better than your average performance across all heroes and positions. Pro players have a set position, so they usually have an easier time getting the roles they want, but even within that one role, they narrow down the list to a few heroes unless a situational counterpick is called for, because they're playing with a focus like learning a new hero because their captain told them it's really good, or revisiting a hero because Icefrog gave promising buffs, etc. The point is that you will learn much more playing a single hero 20 games in a week compared to 20 games across a year. You'll have a better frame of reference for what makes the hero do well or poorly. Your sense of timings and needs like how much gold and XP driven a hero is will be honed sharper and faster. As for positions, it's going to be more difficult to consistently play any given position, but that just means you need to put more thought into simplifying your hero pool per position and which positions to prioritize. Depending on the patch, positions 1 to 4 all get fluctuating amounts of love, and position 5 is undoubtedly always the least preferred role across all brackets. Sometimes you'll be forced to play position 5, in which case, I personally recommend playing heroes with some wave clear since there's just so much space in most pubs, and you have an option of transitioning into a core-like presence if the game drags on. Make a mental list of heroes per position. You can do this by 3 standards: heroes you're good at, heroes you think are good, and heroes you enjoy playing. Best case scenario is that they all overlap obviously, but even if that's not the case, I'm sure your increased win rate will keep you happy. Don't be afraid of becoming worse at other heroes if you start to narrow down your hero pool. Spamming certain heroes does not make you limited as a player unless you do it excessively like those maniacs with thousands of games on a single hero, which is often more fun-driven than learning-driven. In fact, it gives you consistency in learning the game, and many skills that you acquire in Dota are universal. It's how pros are better at pretty much every single hero than you are, regardless of how many games you and they have on each hero. Also, once you hit a critical mass of games within a reasonably short period, the fundamentals will be long-lasting. You'll only need to revisit those heroes from time to time to polish the rust while you can focus your time on different heroes once you're ready to move on. The second tip is to play on pressure. Pressure is probably the single best metric for telling a high quality game from a low one. It comes in many forms, making your opponents feel unsafe in certain areas of the map, cutting waves when your opponents are desperately trying to end the game because they feel like they're playing against the clock, or even having deep aggressive wards so that every move your opponent makes seems a step or two behind. These examples might alternatively be labeled as good plays, but it wouldn't be very helpful for me to just tell you to be a better player, would it? That's how important understanding pressure is to good Dota. If you watch streamers, chances are you've heard them say someone's useless, get out of my lane, I don't understand what you're doing all game, etc. These complaints don't have much to do with feeding or bad spellcasting so much as the lack of actively doing things to win the game. A lot of players don't know how to play on pressure because they don't assign themselves roles in the game. Am I a winning condition? Am I the guy that should be dealing with waves? Am I going to sit behind my carry and counterplay on their initiate? The answer to these questions will come from comparing the opportunity cost of your possible actions, which admittedly feels unnatural to do during the game. Your best games are always going to be the ones where you just feel every move instead of thinking it, like real sports. So that's where this ties to the first point about having a consistent hero pool, so you'll always have that next game to improve and adjust. If you don't have clear defined ideas about how you want to play your hero, watch a few replays of pros, ideally in pubs. One of the great things about Dota is that all the research is done for you by better players who have put in more time. There are literally thousands of replays out there for free. It's mind-blowing how many people say they want to get better but don't do their homework. Let me ask you this. In your pubs, what is the most likely scenario to happen when your team doesn't know what to do? They are going to split across the map and farm because if they knew how to apply pressure, they'd be doing it already.
Oh, that's not how the game is played! You can't do that!
The reason people tend to play more farm-oriented than ideal is because there's a high chance that taking away space from your opponents requires coordination and teamwork, whereas taking and making space can more often be done alone. Even in front page games, there is a lot of confusion and distrust within a team that everyone, including the best players, just does their own thing. Which brings me to my third tip, making calls. This does not mean that you have to be a vocal in-game leader. You do not need to micromanage your teammates or be in charge of every aspect of the game. People often play the bystander until shit hits the fan, and that's their cue to start bitching. You are in a position to make a call the same as everyone else. Many decisions can be made with a simple go or back. If people refuse to listen, then that's too bad, but at least you tried.
Sand King, you should TV bottom. Sand King, you should TV bottom right now. Sand King, you should TV bottom right now. Right now, bro. Right now. Don't fucking wait. Alright, you're waiting. Sand King! Sand King!
I don't think he heard you.
Even if you lose your games, making calls gives you good practice in decision making since doing it in real time takes away from hindsight bias, and you have something to learn if you decide to go back and watch the replay, rather than if you were on the fence about things, you'd be tempted to think that you would have made the right call or even had an opinion. Even very high ranked players can have wasted talent because they are not in the habit of making calls, which is critically important in a team setting. Of course, you don't have to voice your opinion on everything, just the things that you have a strong enough opinion on. If you lost a team fight but they use every cooldown and you see an opportunity to go high ground on respawn, call for it. Or if your team is going Roche after a team fight with no cooldowns and no vision while your opponents are respawning soon, and you don't like where this is going, say something. My point is, if you're going to stay silent during the shot calling process, then you better accept the responsibility of failure as well. These 3 tips have been what a lot of pros do for the sake of becoming better players, not because they are MMR hungry, but I believe they can provide you with some structure when approaching ranked matchmaking. It's normal to feel lost and tilted after a bad streak, so I hope this video will give you guidance in your future games. And as always, thanks for watching.